you, Rose?
I'm well, Lisa. Lisa's going to be talking about leaving your safe harbour. How have you been since last we spoke, Lisa?
I'm doing well. It's been very busy. I have 2 books coming out this year, and one of them I'm going to be being on your podcast to talk about it. The greatest marketing book, the most amazing marketing book ever. That is with Mark Schaefer, and he brought together 34 experts to each write a chapter to talk about the trends that are coming up in the next 3 to 5 years. And it covers absolutely everything. It is just the most amazing group of authors I've ever seen assembled. And he really did it as a community project, if you can believe that. So that's coming out. The Kindle version is coming out mid-May, and then the book launch is early June.
Wow, that's exciting.
Yeah.
Wow. All right. So I guess a little bit about you, Lisa, is she's a CMC. CMC. What does CMC stand for?
I am a certified management consultant, and I received my certification through IMC USA, which is the Institute of Management Consultants. It is a very, very rigorous program to get your certification. Only 2% of consultants worldwide have the certification. You have to demonstrate understanding in your field. You have to demonstrate understanding in business and how to work with clients, and you have to abide by a very long set of ethical requirements of how you work with clients and making sure that you always do what you say, you do it in the manner that it's intended, and you're always transparent.
Wow, that's pretty tough criteria.
Yeah, very tough criteria.
So you are the CEO of Three Dog Right, a Gilbert AZ company she founded in 2012 to work with business leaders who want to accelerate revenue and take market share using digital means through her website, www.3dogright, and Right is WRITE.com. She's quickly becoming one of the top digital growth experts in the world. She's written a book. I think she's probably written more than one, but her first book was Weathering the Digital Storm, and is used by businesses globally to fortify their digital growth strategies in unpredictable times. Her second book was Persuade with a Digital Content Story, uses a tested formula for leveraging the power of digital content to accelerate revenue, and was named one of the top 11 content marketing books in the world to read by Book Authority. And her latest book, Grow Your Market Share in a Zombie Apocalypse, my goodness, provides a business survival guide during unimaginable economic scenarios. Lisa, welcome. Thank you so much for joining me today. It's a pleasure to talk to you again. What have you been up to other than the book?
I've also been doing a lot of speaking engagements, as you know. It's been very exciting, and working with clients. The next book I have coming out at the end of this year is The Greatest Personal Brand Story Ever Told. It's about this man. I don't know if you've heard of him. His name is Jesus.
Okay.
And it's really looking at how the personal brand of Jesus came to be with the tenets of how personal branding is done today. So it really is taking a 2,000-year-old guide and applying it into modern technologies, modern ways of connecting, modern ways of communicating, and seeing how you marry those two together from a business and marketing standpoint.
Okay, sounds really good. So when's that out?
That will be out towards the end of this year, probably November, December.
Wow. Very exciting, very exciting. So just a little bit, I mean, I've read a bit of your bio, but, how do you help clients? And then we'll get into your slide presentation.
Absolutely. So one of our key founding ways that we work with every single client, regardless of who comes into our agency, is we do what we call a digital discovery roadmap. It is currently under trademarking, and it really is a great way for a client to have a very clear baseline of where they're starting from, understanding all the data that's associated with every single digital asset that they have, and be able to reuse the report that we provide so they can constantly monitor these different platforms and these different digital assets as they apply different strategies, content, digital storytelling, and really start to understand the entire marketing picture and have a much better idea of how to move forward. I don't like to guess. Intuition marketing doesn't work. You need to have data and evidence-based decisions in order to really move your strategy forward and to see the gains that you want immediately.
Good stuff. All right. Well, we'll get into your presentation, and I will talk to you a little bit after that.
Okay, awesome. So let me share my screen. Okay. Oops. So one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about this topic, and it is really incredibly timely at this point with everything that's going on with the financial industry, banks closing, inflation on a global perspective, labor shortages, post-pandemic. I mean, we just need to throw in a zombie apocalypse and we would be all set. There is this feeling, this desire to shelter in place, to stay in our safe harbor. And what I want to talk about is what you are sacrificing and what other risks are associated when you do that. I will never say that one way is better or worse than another. There are definitely different ways of being, but we want to look at how those choices really can affect how we move forward, what we're doing in our businesses, and what other elements are happening around us in our safe harbor. And I know it's got the word safe in it, so everyone wants to stay in place, but I would argue that there are snares involved even in the safest of harbors. So I went to Antarctica last year, right around this time. It was February of last year. Fantastic. I can't call it a vacation because it was really an expedition. It was an Antarctic expedition. And it really is the final continent. It is the highest, the driest, the coldest, and the windiest place on Earth. That's a lot of top number ones. The average elevation is just over 2,000 meters, just over 7,500 feet. So a lot of mountains, a lot of mountainous areas within Antarctica. It is also the driest. It has the largest desert on Earth, and these dry valleys have seen no rain for nearly 2 million years. That's a long time to go without rain. It is also the coldest place on Earth, and I can tell you that even in the summer, it does get very cold. The coldest temperature recorded was 89.4 degrees centigrade negative, which is a negative 129 degrees Fahrenheit. And it is also the windiest place on Earth. And again, being there, I can tell you that is also true. Winds can be clocked at up to and over 161 kilometers per hour during the winter months. So it has a lot of things going on. When Ernest Shackleton did his expedition in 1914, he didn't know that these things were true, that Antarctica is the highest, driest, coldest, and windiest location on Earth. He just went forward to see what he would be able to see. And while he was there, as we know, with his ship, the Endurance, he was trapped. The crew was trapped. They didn't realize the elements around them, and they were stuck for several months trying to survive. Now, surprisingly, Antarctica does have, in fact, a harbor, and I would call it a safe harbor. This is a picture as we were entering into the harbor, and just to the left in the picture is what we call Neptune's glass, Neptune's window. It's a beautiful bay, beautiful waters, seemingly calm, very, very tempting to stay in. And that's where we are today. We have this belief that if we stay in our safe harbor as these economic conditions really kind of rage around us, that somehow that decision will keep us perfectly safe. And I believe that there are things that we have to look at from a business standpoint to be able to say, you know what, maybe getting out of our safe harbor is actually the better decision for us in both the short and long term. So let's talk about the first encounter, the first snare that can happen when you are staying in your safe harbor. This is a photo I took. These are Adelie penguins. Again, this is the end of the summer that we were there. They're starting to molt. They're starting to get on their extra coating. And they really are grouping together. And as pack ice forms in Antarctica, it actually doubles the size of the continent. And pack ice is formed in the waters. It is actually a moving type of a structure. It almost is a living, breathing organism. There was a expedition when we were going onto land, and we had to look to see where the pack ice could be forming. We went out in zodiacs, and then we had to come back earlier because suddenly the pack ice started forming around our ship, and we needed to not only traverse the pack ice as we were getting to the ship, but then have the ship get us out of the pack ice and into more open waters. Pack ice is slow but deadly. It encroaches quietly from underneath. It's formed when the water and the air hit and they start to actually solidify. And again, because it is moving, it has no true land mass, it can easily start to encroach. It can start to form together. And more importantly, and Ernest Shackleton found this out, it can crush everything in its wake. Slow but deadly. So when we're talking about our businesses and how we have pack ice forming in our businesses during these safe harbor stints, how is your service quality faring? How is the customer experience for your business going? And how is the reliability of your products or services? These are areas that, like pack ice, can slowly start to shift over time and start to slip in terms of the level that you're used to. Maybe you're used to a 95 or 97 or 99% quality level, and then something happens where it's slightly imperceivable, but we do feel it, and now we're down to 95. And you might think, well, I was at 99 and I'm at 95. That's not so bad, but now 95 becomes your new high normal. And then it shifts again. And now we're at 92. 92 is not so bad when you consider 95. But again, we recalibrate. We start to set that as our standard. And again, it shifts. These types of shifts downward can have detrimental impact on how customers see us, the experience that they have with us, and whether or not they're going to do business again with us, which is key. Now, the chapter that I wrote in Mark Schaefer's upcoming book is around moving customer experience to the digital front. That there are a lot of new nuances with service, with reliability, with the customer experience that we have to be mindful of as we're moving into more of a digital age and having to do more things in the digital space. And these nuances can quickly and almost shockingly just knock us off course. Now, a lot of companies had blamed the pandemic, they blamed labor shortages. That I don't want to call it an excuse, because those were things that were happening. But now we're coming out of it. We've had enough time to work through it. So how are you pivoting so that you're not caught in the pack ice, just like what we were doing when we were getting out with our Zodiacs? Are you paying attention to the conditions around you so that when these issues of service quality, customer experience, product reliability start to slowly come in, that you're able to see them and detect them? And this is where data comes in, and be able to move through them and move out into better waters that might not be in a harbor, that are outside of that area, but give you a higher probability of increasing those 3 items and seeing your customers happier with you than your competition. That's the other thing we have to think about. How are we faring compared to competitors in our space? Now, you see, I have something at the bottom. This to me is your new mantra when you are worried about whether or not you should stay in the safe harbor. You need to get your head back in the business game. Are you focusing on data? Are you focusing on information that you're receiving from customer reviews, from vendors about how products are coming in? And what are you doing to offset any pack ice coming in to your business space to be able to break out and still have freedom of movement? Because that's the other thing. When we think about these items like service quality and customer experience and product and service reliability, when we allow our standard to slip, we're actually positioning ourselves where we're boxed in, like Ernest Shackleton experienced with pack ice. If we're not careful, we could box ourselves in too deep and then see everything shift and start to have an issue. So when we pay attention and get our head back into that business game and really focus on things that will benefit our customers, we're keeping our customers first and keeping them in the center of our attention. That is when we're going to see the greatest returns. And again, that would mean getting out of your comfort zone where you are right now, your safe harbor, moving back out into waters to be able to experience that. So that's number 1, pack ice. Let's talk about timing and the elements. So this picture is a wonderful picture of an Adelie penguin with, there's actually 2 fledglings underneath her. You can't really see the second one, but you can see the one poking up. So this photo was taken at the end of February. Those fledglings should have been almost the same size as the mother at this point in the season, because in just a few weeks, that mother will have to go out into water and feed for several weeks to be able to tie herself over for the winter, because there won't be as much food. When she leaves fledglings for several weeks, they will not survive. Those fledglings did not survive because they were simply too small. The timing of her laying those eggs and hatching those young ones was off. She should have hatched them much earlier in the season. And that's what this is about, timing and the elements. Right now, we have a huge fear of the business unknown. There are a lot of things happening, and they're happening globally. It's almost shocking how many disruptors are happening at the same time, and we don't know which way to go. Do we make this decision? Do we make that decision? If we stay in place, is that a better decision? There's a lot of fear around not knowing what the future holds and whether or not we can take risks within our business to gain market share and increase our clients' engagement. There's also, because of that, there's a lack of agility. We don't feel that we can really pivot and try something else. In the pandemics, shockingly, there was a lot of innovation around digital marketing. CMO survey came out with their survey just a few weeks ago for 2022. And there was actually quite a bit of shift within the pandemic over the last 3 years in what we can do in terms of our digital marketing, our digital engagement. And there was a lot of disruption in that space because there was a necessity for it. We had to pivot and get innovative and come up with new ways of being. So as we're coming out of things and there's still a lot of other unknowns, there is a tendency, and I see this with my clients right now, of not wanting to take a risk, move to a different sector, be slightly agile. This can be, if it makes sense from a data standpoint, then that's great. But if it's only around that fear of the unknown, because we don't know where things are going, we're not quite sure how things are pivoting, we're not quite sure what's going to happen within our world, and we're allowing that lack of agility to take over because of that fear, that's where we're getting into a snare. The safe harbor gives us this feeling of we're going to be okay. It gives us this feeling of, well, we're safer right now. And as we know in business, if we don't constantly review and move forward and follow our industry in terms of where our customers are going, we will be left behind. So how are we changing our agility and moving through? And a lot of that also is around timing. Is now the right time? Is there an opportunity that presents itself, but there's a fear of what might happen with economic conditions, and so we allow that opportunity to pass by? Do we understand how our industry is moving forward in a business standpoint, and how we could actually be the leader in certain areas if we are agile and take the first step forward? We would actually be defining how that space runs. We would be defining that product line. We would be defining that type of experience in the digital world. So having a lack of agility can really, again, it entraps us within our safe harbor, and it removes choices. It removes possibility. And in the business world, we have to be able to pivot as our industry changes, as our customers and prospects change, as our digital environment changes. There's a lot of things that we have to take into consideration, and we have to keep trying to move and have that agility. And sometimes it just needs to be a small shift. It doesn't have to be transformational. You don't have to go from over here all the way over here. Sometimes just a little shift in agility is enough to get us pointed in the right direction and have a lot more possibility. There's also, with this timing, is we end up having a lack of innovation. Again, during the pandemic, there was a ton of innovation because we had to do it. There was nothing else we could do. And if we wanted to survive, we had to come up with new ways to get to our customers, to communicate with our customers, to get products and services to our customers. We were forced into innovating. And when we stay in our safe harbor because we're not quite sure what's happening next, we're losing that entrepreneurial spirit that helps us to break business barriers. Are you approaching $1 million in your business? That is one business barrier. If you're going from 1 million to 25 million, that's another business barrier. If you're going from 25 million to 50 million, that's another barrier. Each step along the way requires innovation and moving forward with new ways of being in our business, with new ways of showing up for our customers, and new ways of moving into our industry and the market share to disrupt it, to create something new. So my remedy for this potential snare of timing and the elements is don't succumb to business complacency. If you're always in the mindset of, well, as soon as we have financial stability, as soon as the labor shortage is modified, as soon as inflation is under control, as soon as we don't have an issue with banks collapsing, as soon as our government puts in policies that are more favorable. If you're having the as soon as strategy, then you really are allowing opportunity to go past you and never really taking a risk and stepping forward. Another way of looking at that is, are you on the court or are you in the stands? When it comes to your business, you really need to be on the court. We need to be out of that safe harbor, and we need to be actively taking action in order to move things within our business, within our industry, and to be the thought leaders and the authority that helps the rest of the industry move to the next level. If you think about that, wanting to continually improve and drive, and again, bringing in that thought leadership and authority that I know each one of you has, because you have an expertise in one or more areas that you could be helping your fellow industry owners and business owners to move into. So how are we fighting against that business complacency and not getting trapped into our safe harbor and actually being able to move out into the open waters, which is a little risky, but maybe with the right timing, you could actually move forward. And the other thing is, when you think about timing, if you're moving forward and you're going after new market share, existing market share, and you're doing it first, you have that little bit of an edge against your competition, and you're continually moving them forward as well. So how are we really writing the rules and rewriting the rules and getting out of this business complacency and getting out into those open waters where there's a lot of different ways we could go? Safe harbor, you can only stay in one or, a few little positions. So that's number 2. So we talked about the pack ice. We talked about timing and the elements. Let's talk about the wildlife. So wildlife in Antarctica is not cute and cuddly. So these are fur seals. When we were, and again, this is a harbor. This actually has a volcano that runs underneath the waters, which is why you see all the steam rising up. The waters were actually warm, not scalding hot, but they were definitely warm. And in winter months, when it's absolutely freezing outside, these fur seals can go into this water that constantly stays hot and to be able to survive the winter. What we found out about the fur seals is that, well, number one, you wouldn't think they would move quickly on land, and they can. They can book it. And if they're in the water, they're even faster. So When we were walking along this beach, we had walking sticks, hiking sticks. And I couldn't understand why we had hiking sticks because it's a beach. Our guide stopped and she had bent down right by the water to pick up a rock to show us. And out of nowhere, one of these fur seals comes flying out of the water at her because he thought she was food. She stood up, she put her sticks above her head and started hitting them. And we all put our sticks above the head and started hitting them to get the fur seal to back off. What I found out later is if anybody had been bitten by a fur seal, and we were told to stay together to make sure, but if any one of us had been bitten by a fur seal, you have about, I think it's like 10 or 12 hours before you become completely septic. And I think it's under 24 hours you die. So fur seal bites are very bad. If we had gotten bitten by a fur seal, we would have had to immediately gone to the boat, and then they would have had to call for helicopter assistance to get someone to a hospital or a med tent on one of the stations in Antarctica. And Antarctica does have stations where different countries do military exercises, they do scientific research, and also they have a full medical facility to at least initially treat the person before they are taken back to the mainland, which is Argentina. So not cute and cuddly, wildlife, super dangerous. So let's talk about what that means in terms of your safe harbor in your business. So there's definitely encroaching market competition. There are going to be a ton of other markets, other individuals that are trying to come in and take your market share. Just like that seal that came charging out of the water to attack our guide, there always is something that we have to fight against with our competition. I also think that sometimes we dismiss companies that are just starting out, a small business that we consider to be mom and pop, and we don't really pay attention to them. I think that's a mistake. And if we're not paying attention to emerging competition, emerging businesses, it can be death by 1,000 cuts. They take just a little bit at a time, and then suddenly we have no market share, or we hit under a certain threshold and we can't survive. So when we're looking at our competition that could be attacking us, when we're looking at small businesses that could come in and slowly erode our market share, and we're not considering them a threat because maybe on land they're a little bit slower, like the fur seal, but they still can move, that can be a really big mistake. And there's also shifts that happen in our market share, in our products and services. When we think about where we were in the pandemic, like think back to where you were pre-pandemic, and now what your business strategy is, what your go-to-market strategy is, how you communicate with customers, what products and services you actually offer now versus just 3 years ago. We've seen massive disruptions in how things are moving and how things are shifting. And if we are staying within our safe harbor, we miss out on what other people are doing. That is that tenet of review and improve on the competition. R&D is great. Rob and duplicate. Do it. Look at your competition. See what they're doing. That's fantastic. See what they're doing that is something that you could do better, or they're doing something and it gives you an idea of something else you could do with your products. Maybe they start to do a certain type of digital campaign or social media. You think, well, social media might not work, but maybe I can do something with email, or maybe I can do something with video, or maybe I could write a book. Maybe I could do a podcast. There's a lot of things that we can do within our digital world that allows us to keep our market share, allows us to pay attention to small businesses that are around us, and allows us to constantly, again, it's that tenet of constantly improving what we do and how we do it, and constantly optimizing so that we are breaking through business barriers to get to our next revenue level and to be able to see how things are going with our competition, to see if there's anything that we need to be aware of. When that seal came out at our guide, we had already talked about using our sticks, and being able to have all of us do that at the same time really stopped that fur seal in its tracks, and it went off and it went, oop, that's not food, better not touch that. How can you work within your industry with your competition, with other people in your space, with people who have complementary products and services to yours? How can you band together to work through things that are happening and to push through this type of competition and market conditions? Again, there's that safety in numbers, and there is that safety in having people around you. Can you move them out of the safe harbor with you? Move out into open waters and work together to be able to fight any kind of market share shift, industry shift. Maybe there's a new player that's completely disrupted your industry. I will give you an example. ChatGPT. That is disrupting both marketing for writing and IT for coding. ChatGPT will be able to code your website in probably just a few years. You'll be able to put in parameters of what you want, and it will spit out a bunch of code, and you'll copy it and put it into WordPress, and boom, you have a new website. That will put a lot of coders out of business. Marketing. There are a lot of people who think I can now just use ChatGPT to write my content. And I'm not saying that you can't do that, but when you're doing that, maybe you're cutting out some informational guides and items like that, but how are you taking that content perhaps and adding storytelling to it? Are you going to be able to pump out content at a faster rate? Will you need certain types of copywriters? Maybe you'll need story writers instead of copywriters. How will this disrupt those industries? I had a conversation with my brother. He is in IT. He is a software engineer. And he called me up and he was freaking out and saying, we're all going to be out of a job. And that is a possibility, but I think there is still a way of working together and showing value with using that technology. And that technology, artificial intelligence, machine learning, you wouldn't think that could impact things like coding for a website, things like writing copy for a blog. It could. So how are you working and looking at those shifts, those crazy fur seals coming out of nowhere, and seeing how can you leverage that to make your job better, to make your business better, and to really have fantastic content that comes out at the end. So again, pack ice. We want to keep our eye on in the business game. We're going to keep our eye on the business ball. Timing and the elements. Sometimes you have to take a risk and you have to see what the timing is, but doing nothing is in fact a choice. And we want to look at how do we constantly stay in action and move our business forward, and being very, very mindful of the wildlife and reviewing and improving on competition that comes into our space. So, as Rose mentioned, I have 3 books that I always encourage people to purchase. The first book I actually wrote right before the pandemic. I wrote it in 2019. And that really is around how your digital growth strategies can be fortified, what you can do to make your digital growth strategies stronger and more resilient, especially in unpredictable times, which who knew it would be so unpredictable? My second book, Persuade with a Digital Content Story. Storytelling is the future of digital content. When you tell a story and you share it, people listen to you and they respond and they relate to you better. And now the future of content is storytelling, because people are hardwired for stories. And because of that, stories sell. So I have a book that actually lays out a 6-step digital content story formula that allows you to really gain a marketing competitive edge and sharing your story, including your personal brand story, which is key, and sharing that human story with your prospects and your clients. And my last book that came out last year, Grow Your Market Share in a Zombie Apocalypse, goes over the 4 tenets I believe every single business should be practicing on a daily basis so that you have a business survival guide. And when the unimaginable happens, you can survive it and thrive. And as I said, I have 2 new books coming out this year. So again, the most amazing marketing book ever. Hashtag amazing marketing book. It again is 350 ideas. It's a lot of content. It will be coming out. The Kindle version will come out in mid-May. The hard copy will be coming out in June. There will also be an Audible version. Each one of the authors recorded their own chapter. So you'll actually get to hear 35 different voices sharing their take on a subject and the tips and trends that are coming and things that you've never heard before. It was very important to Mark Schaefer that we talk about things that are really disruptive and revolutionary so that you are able to really be prepared for the future of marketing as we move forward. And it covers literally everything from AI and ChatGPT to social media to marketing, customer experience, video, social media, email, everything. Everything is covered in this book. Personal branding, you name it, we've covered it. And again, that's going to be a fantastic book. And I highly recommend you get a copy because it will probably just blow your mind. And then the book that I have coming out is The Greatest Personal Brand Story Ever Told. Again, it is looking at how the personal brand of Jesus from a marketing perspective has been brought forth or brought through time to current day, and how the different tenets of personal branding can really be rooted into things that were practiced in the time that Jesus was introduced and the time that Jesus lived, and how those items came through with his personal brand. And I don't know about you, but if people are still talking about me 2,000 years later, I think that's a success. So I'm very, very excited and proud of this book. Again, it is going to give you a ton of information on how you can make your personal brand the strongest it can be, and to have a personal brand that really will survive over time and with other individuals who can evangelize on your behalf, which again makes your brand stronger. So those 2 books I'm very, very excited about. And The Greatest Personal Brand Story Ever Told, as I said, will be coming out towards the end of the year, November, December timeframe. I'll also be doing an e-learning course with it, platform. So you can read the book, you can do the coursework, and you can apply all that you learned in 2024 and really make that your year for your personal brand. And if you would like to start a conversation with me, I would love it. I could talk about this all day. You can email me, you can visit my website, and be sure that you follow me on LinkedIn. I have been posting on LinkedIn every single day. I'm doing an experiment on content and posting. And I would love for you to follow me on LinkedIn to see when things are coming out, to find out more about speaking engagements that I'm doing. So if you want to hear me either speak virtually or speak live. And if you have a question and want to have a conversation, you can DM me and I'd love to talk to you. I really hope that you think about the safe harbor that you've kind of developed, and that you really push yourself forward in terms of where you are, that you don't just stay complacent, and that you always take a step forward with your business so that it can be the best it can be every single day.
Lisa, that was amazing. I love the analogies between your trip to Antarctica and the information that you shared. I've not heard a presentation like that before, and I think it was really engaging and interesting. That it's something for other presenters maybe to think of in the future, how they could use a story or an occurrence.
Yeah, I love storytelling, as you know, Rose. I love telling stories. Otherwise, it's just you just listening to me talk. Like,
well, that's true. That is very true. But I just love the connection between the two, and it just tied in perfectly, and it was absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that. I loved it.
Thank you for having me. This was a lot of fun.
I'm so glad that you enjoyed it. Lisa, you've explained where people can find you. Yeah, you are in America. Your number didn't actually display.
Oh, sorry, I did not display that. You're right. My bad.
I think it's a plus. What is it?
The plus one. Plus one.
Yeah. So yeah. And for those that are in the group, there's lifetime access to all of these videos anyway. So when you get to Lisa's, just remember to put the plus one in front of it. So it's been an absolute pleasure, my dear. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing with us your presentation. It was spot on. I loved it. And I'm going to go back and watch it again. And I'm going to go watch them all again because they've been absolutely wonderful.
They've been awesome. They've been fantastic. And it's funny because it's been such a weird time. Like for everybody, not just for absolutely everybody, just around the world. And it seems like every single presentation really has honed in on one new thing that we're struggling with and how to break out of that and get through it. So it's been fantastic.
It has been good. Thank you so much for joining us. And I will be talking to you again soon, and hopefully you'll come back on Talking with the Experts. Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you. I'll see you later, Rose.
Bye, darling.